Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I grew up in Oregon, in a town small enough that most people pass through it without even realizing they had. My brother Jason and I were 2 years apart. Close enough to fight like dogs, but tight enough that we always made up. When we were kids, my dad used to take us camping deep into the Cascades. After he passed, Jason and I kept the tradition going. We made a promise. Every fall, just before the first snow, we'd go out for a weekend. No phones, no distractions, just us and the trees. The year this happened, we hiked out to a place called Stillwater Lake. It's not on most maps. One of those places locals whisper about, like it's sacred or cursed, depending on who you ask. We weren't superstitious. We just liked the silence. And Stillwater had plenty of it. We set up camp a little ways from the shore. The water lived up to its name. Glass still, not a ripple even with the wind. No bird song, no frogs, just quiet. Jason joked it was peaceful. I said it felt like something was holding its breath. That first night, we roasted hot dogs and marshmallows, drank cheap beer, and traded old stories by the fire. When the flames burned low and the cold crept in, we called it and crawled into our tent. Jason fell asleep right away. I remember hearing his soft snore, a rhythm I'd grown used to over the years. It was comforting, but around 1 a.m., I woke up. Not the kind of slow, groggy wake where you stretch and roll over. No, I woke like a switch had been flipped. Heart pounding, eyes wide, alert, and then I heard it. "Hey," the voice said, "come out here. You gotta see this." It was Jason's voice. Only not. It was off. Flat. Like someone had studied his tone, but didn't quite get the melody. I turned slowly and looked over at him. He was there, zipped up in his sleeping bag, mouth slightly open, still snoring. I froze. The voice came again. "Come on, hurry. You don't want to miss it." That wrongness in the voice dug into my spine like a hook. My first thought was that someone was out there, trying to lure me out. But who the hell would be this far into the woods? And why use Jason's voice? I didn't say a word, just lay there, eyes fixed on the tent zipper. Then came the sound I'll never forget, the soft, deliberate hiss of the zipper being undone from the outside. It started at the bottom and slowly slid upward. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My hand inched toward the small hatchet we kept beside us, but every movement felt like it took a year. The zipper stopped halfway. The flap didn't open. No hand. No face. Just nothing. I waited. Minutes passed. Silence. Then the whisper started. Low. Inhuman. Like wet leaves brushing together, but forming words. "He won't wake up. Only you. Just you." My hand closed around the hatchet handle, and still I didn't move. The whispering stopped all at once, like someone had turned off a radio. I stayed awake the rest of the night, eyes burning, staring at the half-open zipper and the shadows beyond it. When morning finally came, light flooded the tent, and everything felt unreal. Jason sat up, stretched, looked at me like I was crazy when I asked if he'd gotten up during the night. "No, man," he said. "Did you?" I shook my head. We stepped outside together. The air was cold and smelled like pine and lake water. The zipper was still half open, and there were no footprints, no disturbed soil, no broken branches, No sign that anything had walked near the tent at all. Jason made breakfast while I walked the perimeter. My mind raced for answers. Maybe a prank, a vivid dream, a sleepwalking hallucination. But none of those explained why I was so certain that what I heard wasn't human, and definitely wasn't my brother. We spent the rest of the day hiking, trying to shake it off, but the woods didn't feel the same. The silence felt heavier, and when we sat by the lake that evening, we both noticed it at the same time. There were no animals, not a single bird, not even bugs, just that still, choking quiet. That night, I insisted we double-check the tent zippers and bring all our gear inside. I kept the hatch in my hand, not just nearby. Jason laughed, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He remembered how pale I'd looked that morning. We lay in silence. At 12:43 a.m., I checked my watch. At 1:04, I heard my name. Eli. Come on, Eli. Jason's voice again, but this time it came from inside the tent, right behind me. I spun around, and there he was, still asleep, breathing steady. I looked toward the corner of the tent where the voice had come from. Something moved. The tent wall bulged inward like a balloon being pressed from outside. No shape, just a push. I lifted the hatchet, my hand shaking. The bulge slowly retreated. I didn't sleep again, just sat there, eyes locked on that corner, waiting for it to come back. But it didn't. When the sun rose, we packed up fast. Jason didn't even ask why. He felt it too by then. Whatever was out there, it didn't want us. It wanted me. I've told this story a few times over the years, always half laughing, pretending it was just a creepy dream. But I know better. I've heard of creatures in old legends. Mimics, skinwalkers, doppelgangers, things that wear your loved ones like masks and call to you from the dark. I used to think the scariest part was the voice, but now I know the truth. The scariest part is that it knew who I loved, and it knew exactly what to say to make me open that tent. And one day, if I had been a little more tired, a little more curious, I might have stepped outside. Story 2. I was alone in the woods. Not lost. Not yet. But I've been hiking for hours through Pennsylvania's Teton State Forest, and I've been stubborn about it. I didn't want to turn back. Didn't want to lose the high of being out here, away from the noise of the world. The skies had been heavy for a while, but it wasn't until the first crack of thunder shook the air that I realized I might be in trouble. I had no idea just how much trouble. The storm came fast, an unpredictable beast with gusting winds and sheets of rain. The kind of weather that slams into you without mercy, the sky opening up like it's been waiting for a chance to pour itself out. I scrambled for shelter, and that's when I saw it. The fire tower, half hidden behind the thick branches of a stand of birches, like it was waiting for me too. The tower looked abandoned, but it was better than being out in the storm. I was stupid for thinking I'd be safe, but that's how things go in places like this. You think you're okay, and then the woods remind you that you're just a visitor passing through. The ladder creaked as I climbed it, the wood slick with rain and worn by the years. The tower swayed with the wind, but it held steady. The higher I got, the more the storm seemed to twist itself into something darker, like it was feeding off the loneliness of the place. The rain pounded harder, the wind screamed like 1,000 voices, but the tower stood silent, a forgotten sentinel. At the top, I ducked inside the small, cramped space. There was just enough room for a cot, a few old chairs, and a desk covered in dust. The wooden floor was cracked in places, and the air smelled musty, stale like old books and mildew. I unpacked my gear, trying to ignore the chill creeping into my bones. I had a flash of irritation. How stupid had I been not to check the weather? Now I was stuck up here, with nothing to do but wait for the storm to pass. That's when I saw it. I was sitting in one of the chairs, trying to eat some granola, when a flash of lightning illuminated the walls. And that's when I saw the scratches. At first, I thought they were just marks, normal wear and tear, you know, maybe from animals or the weather. But when the next lightning flash hit, I saw something that made my stomach tighten. The scratches weren't random. They were words. Desperate, jagged carvings, gouged deep into the wood. Some of them were hard to make out, like they had been scratched in a hurry, but I could see the words clearly enough. Let me out. I rubbed my eyes. I blinked hard. My brain, soaked in fatigue and the thundering storm outside, tried to make sense of it. Not alone. It was like the walls were trying to tell me something, trying to scream at me. At first, I figured it was just some prank. Kids or drunks, who knew? But then I saw it. The last scratch, the one that sent a chill crawling up my spine. Help me. That's when the noises started. A slow shuffle, like something dragging itself across the floor, moving just beneath the tower. I felt my heart thud in my chest. I tried to laugh it off. It had to be the wind, the storm, the way the wood creaked in the gusts. But then the noise came again. Not the wind. Footsteps. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed my flashlight, my hands shaking as I turned it on, shining it through the tiny windows of the tower, down into the inky darkness below. Nothing, just rain and shadows. I breathed out, thinking maybe it was a deer, maybe a raccoon. But when I turned the flashlight off, the sound came back. Closer, steady, footsteps, dragging through the wet forest floor, slow, deliberate. And then came the voice. It wasn't loud. It was barely a whisper, but it crawled into my ears, crawling deeper than it should have. You shouldn't be here. My heart skipped. The words, so soft, so empty, like they came from somewhere far away, echoed inside my skull. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, like I had just swallowed ash. I couldn't breathe for a second. I tried to tell myself it was nothing more than the storm playing tricks on me. But deep down I knew it wasn't. I stood up, my legs stiff, my pulse thundering in my ears. I walked to the ladder, my fingers trembling as I touched the cold metal. The footsteps below were still there, circling the base of the tower. I felt like they were getting closer, like whatever was out there could sense my fear was feeding off it. The voice came again, a soft rasp in the dark, barely audible but unmistakable. You shouldn't be here. It was closer now. That's when I snapped. I didn't think. I just ran. I bolted down the ladder, ignoring the slickness of the rungs, the storm lashing against my face. The wind screamed. The rain poured down in sheets, but none of it mattered. I wasn't thinking. I just had to get out. The footsteps were still following me, just out of reach, just enough to keep me moving faster, harder. I ran and ran until I couldn't feel my legs, until my lungs were burning with each desperate breath. I don't remember much after that, Only the blur of trees passing by, the taste of rain in my mouth, and the noise, the sound of footsteps behind me. Too close, too real. I finally stumbled into the ranger station just before dawn. I don't know how I made it. I should have collapsed from exhaustion, but something kept pushing me. I was shaking, drenched, and half crazy with fear. The ranger looked at me like he had seen this before, like he was used to hikers coming in after the storm, their eyes wide, their minds shattered. "You saw the tower, didn't you?" he said. I nodded, confused. My voice wouldn't come out. "That tower's been off limits for decades," the ranger went on, his voice low and serious. "Some guy went missing up there in '83. They never found his body. But sometimes people hear things, see things that shouldn't be there." I stared at him, my brain still trying to catch up. "They never found the body," he repeated. "But the tower, it's still waiting." The way he said made my skin crawl. I didn't go back to the woods after that, and I haven't been near that fire tower or any tower since. Sometimes, when the wind howls through the trees, I think I can still hear those footsteps shuffling just behind me. And I wonder, sometimes, if I'll ever hear that whisper again. "You shouldn't be here." Story 3. We thought we were just out for a weekend escape. You know, college kids looking for stars and smokes and stories to tell when we got back. There were 5 of us. Me, Sam, Katie, Andre, and Leah. Sophomores at Appalachian State, craving something different than dorm rooms and late-night Taco Bell. So we picked a spot in the woods near Black Hollow. Isolated, untouched, not even marked on most maps. That should have been the first red flag. We set up camp near a clearing ring by old oak trees. The air had that thick pine needle smell that sticks to your skin and clothes. The kind of smell that tells you you're far from city lights. By sundown, we had a fire going. We were passing around beers and laughing at Andre's terrible ghost stories. It was the kind of night where the woods seem alive but friendly. Crickets chirping, a breeze rustling leaves, distant owls. Then around midnight, everything shifted. Leah was the first to notice it. "You guys see that?" she asked, squinting into the trees. At first I thought it was just firelight playing tricks, but then I saw it too. A flickering orange light deep in the trees, like someone carrying an old lantern. It swayed back and forth gently, floating between the tree trunks. We all went quiet. "Probably another camper," Andre said, though his voice wasn't convincing. "Out here," Sam replied. "There's nobody for miles." Katie stood up. "Let's go say hi. Maybe they're lost." I didn't like it. Something about the way the lantern moved didn't feel right. It didn't bounce like someone walking. It glided, slow and smooth. But the others were already grabbing flashlights, so I followed. We walked toward the light, weaving between trees and stepping over fallen branches. But every time we thought we were getting close, the lantern drifted farther away, just out of reach. "Katie, wait," Leah shouted suddenly. I turned and saw Katie standing still, head tilted like she was listening. "She's calling me," she whispered. Her voice was blank, emotionless. Then she turned and started walking off trail, deeper into the woods, toward the light. We shouted for her to stop, but she didn't even flinch. Just kept walking, barefoot now. She'd lost her shoe somewhere and didn't even seem to notice. We ran after her. I remember how the trees seemed to lean in, like they were closing around us. The lantern light bobbed ahead like a lure on a fishing line. And then came the sound. Not footsteps, not branches breaking, sobbing, a low, terrible weeping echoing through the forest. It didn't sound human. It was raw and broken, like the forest itself was grieving. Katie kept walking. We caught up to her near a thicket of brambles. Her arms were scratched and bleeding, but she didn't seem to care. Andre grabbed her shoulders while I held her waist, trying to pull her back. She screamed, not like she was afraid, like she was angry, like we were ripping her away from something she needed. "You're taking me from my child," she shrieked. "He needs me. Let me go." She clawed at us, sobbing just like the voice in the woods. I saw something in her eyes. Desperation, yes, but also this kind of hollow hunger. Like she wasn't really Katie anymore. It took all three of us to drag her back to camp. When we finally got her in her sleeping bag, she passed out. Just like that. Out cold. The rest of us sat there in silence. The forest had gone completely still. No crickets. No wind. Just watching. The next morning, Katie had no memory of it. She thought we were joking. "Lantern Lady," she said, laughing, "you guys are messing with me." But she had scratches on her arms. Deep ones. She couldn't explain those. We packed up early and headed into town. None of us said much on the hike out. At the diner in the next town over, we told the waitress what we saw. Her face changed, like she'd heard it before. "You kids are up by Black Hollow?" she asked. "You don't go there. Not at night." "Why?" I asked, trying to sound casual. My hands were shaking under the table. She leaned in. "They say a woman lost her baby out there, back in the 1800s. Died searching for him. Froze to death, some say. Others say she starved. But they found her with that baby's blanket clutched in her arms. She's been roaming those woods ever since, lantern in hand. Looking. Looking for what?" Sam asked. The waitress didn't blink. For someone to take his place. We didn't talk about it again. At least, not together. Katie dropped out the next semester. Said she didn't feel like herself anymore. Said she had strange dreams. Dreams about holding a baby in a forest soaked with moonlight. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see the lantern, still hear the sobbing, and deep down, I know she wasn't calling for Katie. She was calling for any of us. Story 4. They say the forest remembers. You can cut it, burn it, carve roads through it, but it remembers. Every footstep, every echo, every sin. I used to think stories like they were just folklore, meant to keep kids from wandering too far into the woods. But after what happened to my cousin and me in the Boundary Waters, I can't unhear the whispers. This happened 4 summers ago, and I still wake up with bark in my dreams. We were deep in the Minnesota wilderness, that no man's land of thick woods, crystal lakes, and absolute silence. My cousin Luke and I had planned the trip for months. We were both in our 30s, had grown up fishing together, hiking together, and now that we were old enough to afford gear and dumb enough to ignore warnings, we wanted to find a part of the forest untouched by man. And we did. We found a stretch of land just off the water trail, where the trees grew so thick overhead that the sunlight barely kissed the mossy floor. It was perfect. No signs of humans. No trash. No chopped wood. Just untouched nature. Or so we thought. We set up camp near a clearing filled with stumps. Dozens of them, like rotten teeth jutting out of the ground. Some were ancient, eaten by moss and fungus. Others looked fresher, oddly smooth, clean cuts. Luke figured they were left from old logging runs, maybe back in the early 1900s. That first night, the silence was almost too loud. No crickets, no frogs, just the soft lapping of water and the occasional rustle from the trees. I lay in my sleeping bag, staring at the nylon roof, when I heard it. A whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind. It had that kind of hushed, breathy rhythm. But the longer I listened, the more I realized it had words. He sees you. It was so faint I thought I imagined it. I even chuckled to myself. Camp brain. Your mind plays tricks when there's nothing but trees and shadows. I rolled over and forced myself to sleep. The next morning, I didn't mention it. Luke seemed fine, joking as he boiled water and threw a line in the lake. We hiked a little, explored a ridge that overlooked the clearing. The stumps looked like part of a graveyard from up there. No pattern, no reason. Just cut, left, forgotten. That night, I heard the whisper again. He sees you, clearer this time, closer. When I sat up in the tent, I realized Luke was gone. I scrambled out, heart hammering in my throat, flashlight already in hand. I scanned the clearing and saw him, down by one of the biggest stumps. He was on his knees, head bowed, completely still. "Luke," I hissed, trying not to yell. No response. I walked closer, crunching over dry twigs and soft moss. My light hit his face and I stopped cold. His eyes were open, glassy. His lips moved slowly. "They want stories," he whispered. "They need stories to rest." "Luke," I said, grabbing his shoulder. "What the hell are you talking about?" His head turned to me like it weighed 100 pounds. "They're listening, always listening." I dragged him back to the tent. He didn't fight me, but he didn't talk either. That night, he didn't sleep. Just lay on his back, eyes wide, mumbling names I'd never heard in my life. Thomas Whittle, June Clearwater, Elias Black, Annie Sturgis, one after the other. Hours of it. A ghostly roll call from someone else's century. The next morning, I wanted to leave. Badly. But every trail we took curved back to the clearing. We tried the compass. GPS sun direction. It didn't matter. 2 hours walking north. Right back at the stump. That night, Luke didn't speak. He didn't blink much either. He just sat outside the tent, staring at the clearing. I stayed awake with a knife in my sleeping bag. I don't know if I was afraid of him or what was in the woods. Sometime after midnight, the whispers came back. Dozens of them. Hundreds. "You hear us. Tell it. Speak the names. Make them remember." I shut my eyes and prayed. Not out loud. I was afraid they'd hear that too. By the fourth morning, I was losing it. No food left. Barely any water. I couldn't take the whispers, the way the trees leaned in like they were eavesdropping. I nearly broke down. Then, like a cruel joke, the trail worked. We walked and walked, and this time we didn't come back to the stump. We made it to the water trail just as the sun began to rise. We paddled until our arms went numb and didn't stop until we saw a dock and an old cabin on the far side. A man came out, gray beard, eyes like steel. "You boys all right?" he asked. I nodded. Luke didn't speak. I told the man everything. Not all at once, just enough to feel sane. When I described the stumps, the whispers, the names, his face went pale. You were in Black Hollow, he said. What's that? Old Ojibwe burial grounds. Sacred land. The loggers knew. Didn't care. Cut everything down until the forest changed. Started whispering. Started showing people things. I asked him if people ever stayed lost. He looked away. Some don't make it out. Some leave pieces of themselves behind. And some come back different. Luke hasn't spoken a word since we left the forest. Not one. He sits by the window in his apartment, sketching trees and stumps in charcoal, over and over again, each drawing darker than the last. Sometimes he whispers, just barely, and if I listen close enough, I swear I still hear them too. He sees you. I don't go near the woods anymore. Not even city parks. Not even backyards. Because the forest remembers. And I think it still wants a story.